All right, let's dive right into one of the most misunderstood parts of the internet, the darknet. You've probably heard the name thrown around in the news, but what is it really? How does it all work? Let's unmask it. So think about your daily routine online. Google, social media, news sites, but have you ever wondered what else is out there? The reality is, what you see every day is just a tiny fraction of the internet. Most of it is completely hidden from view, operating in the shadows. The easiest way to picture it is like an iceberg. The part above the water, that's the surface web, everything Google can find. Then you've got the deep web, which is a huge chunk of the internet behind a password. Think your email inbox or your online banking. But way down at the bottom, intentionally hidden and encrypted, that's the dark web. And hey, just a quick clarification. The dark net is the network that lets you be anonymous, and the dark web is all the websites built on top of it. So how does this whole hidden part of the web even function? Well, it all boils down to one incredibly important feature: anonymity. Serious, powerful, layered anonymity. The secret sauce here is something called onion routing, which is what the Tor network uses. Okay, imagine you write a secret message. You put it in an envelope, seal it, then put that envelope inside another sealed one, and then another. That's kind of what happens to your data. It's wrapped in layers of encryption. Then it gets bounced through a random chain of volunteer computers all over the world. Each computer only peels off one layer to see where to send it next, so no single point in that chain knows both where the message started and where it's going. It's genius, really. Now, you might think it's just this chaotic, unorganized place, but believe it or not, it has its own search engines. Things like Deep Search and Omnia act as gateways. But they don't work like Google. They can't just crawl and index everything. Finding things on the darknet is much more about knowing where to look or using curated lists. Okay, so here's the big question. If everyone's anonymous, how do you trust anyone? How do you buy something without getting ripped off? Well, they solved this with something called an escrow system. A buyer sends their crypto payment, but it's held by the marketplace, not the seller. Only when the buyer says, "Yep, I got my stuff," does the marketplace release the money. It's a clever way to create trust where there is none. And it's this combination of anonymity and, well, trust that fuels a massive hidden economy. So let's get into it. What's actually for sale here? And this is where things get really jarring. You look at these sites, and the interface is super familiar. It looks just like Amazon or any other online store. Categories, 5-star ratings, a shopping cart, the whole deal. But the products? Yeah, that's a whole different story. We're talking about drugs, stolen credit cards, weapons, you name it. And when you look at the numbers, it's wow. It's really clear what's driving this whole economy. A whopping 68% of all the listings on these marketplaces are for illicit drugs and chemicals. It completely dwarfs everything else. But this goes beyond just selling illegal stuff. It's gotten incredibly dangerous because of a deadly bait and switch. There's a huge public health crisis brewing because pills sold as, say, prescription oxycodone are very often just fakes pressed with incredibly potent and often lethal fentanyl. The risk of overdose is just astronomical. And while drugs are the biggest market by far, the weapons trade is another huge threat. You can see handguns are the most common, but look at that last bar, the 3D printed files. That's a newer and frankly scarier trend. These are untraceable ghost guns that anyone with a 3D printer can make, totally bypassing any kind of regulation. So with all this going on, you've got to ask, where are the police? Well, this has kicked off a massive global game of cat and mouse. Law enforcement agencies all over the world are teaming up to fight back. A perfect example of this was Operation Raptor back in 2025. This wasn't just one country. It was a huge coordinated takedown involving police from 10 different nations, all targeting the biggest vendors and the people running the sites. And the results were huge. They made 270 arrests. These weren't just low-level buyers. They got major sellers and even site administrators. It was a major wake-up call that anonymous on the darknet doesn't always mean invincible. They also hit him where it hurts, the wallet. Over $200 million in cash and crypto was seized. Even with all the tricks criminals use to hide their money, investigators are getting way, way better at following that digital trail. But this is what it's all about, right? The real-world impact. They seized 144 kilos of fentanyl. To put that in perspective, that is a massive, massive amount of a truly deadly drug taken off the streets. There's no doubt that actions like this save lives. You know, one of their most effective tools is actually surprisingly low-tech. It's called a controlled delivery. So law enforcement intercepts a package in the mail, but instead of just seizing it, an undercover officer, dressed as a delivery driver, brings it to the address. The second the person accepts the package, boom, they have him. It gives them the legal grounds to raid the house right then and there. But here's the thing. For every big win law enforcement has, the darknet just adapts. It's incredibly resilient. The battle is far, far from over. You can see this constant technological arms race playing out over time. Back in the day, everything was on Bitcoin. Then, police figured out how to trace Bitcoin transactions, so criminals shifted to more private cryptocurrencies like Monero. Now, we're seeing another shift away from big, centralized marketplaces to smaller, private groups on encrypted chat apps like Telegram. It just keeps evolving. And that really gets to the heart of the problem. This quote sums it up perfectly. The whole ecosystem is just too good at adapting. It's like playing whack-a-mole. You shut one market down and its users just scatter and find a new one. The demand is still there, so the supply always finds a way. So this all leads us to a really tough question. Given how fast it adapts and evolves, are law enforcement efforts just a temporary solution? Is the battle for the darknet actually unwinnable? It's a question that security experts and, frankly, all of us are still trying to figure out.